Okay, what if I told you that pretty much every single major problem we face, we're talking war, poverty, the whole shebang, it doesn't actually come down to politics or economics? What if it all boils down to a single, broken math equation? Yeah, I know, it's a huge idea, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack in this explainer.
So this is really the core question for everything we're about to cover. Can a simple math problem really solve humanity's biggest, most complex challenges? I know, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction. But stick with me, because the argument is actually surprisingly grounded in physics and, believe it or not, game theory.
You know, everything really does boil down to these two equations. On the left, you've got the math that runs our world right now. 1 + 1 = 2. Two separate competitors. But on the right, well, that's a completely different logic, one inspired by the wild world of quantum physics. 1 + 1 = 1, a single, unified system. And these aren't just numbers. Think of them as the fundamental source code for two totally different versions of humanity.
To even begin to understand where we might be heading, we first have to get a really clear picture of where we are right now. Our entire society, our social operating system, if you will, is built on what the source material calls a broken form of social math.
And this broken math, it's got a name: Newtonian social math. It's a worldview that's totally inspired by old-school classical physics. You know, the predictable physics of separate, solid objects. And as we're about to see, when you try to apply that kind of mechanical logic to messy, complicated human beings, well, you end up creating the very conflicts and divisions that define our world today.
All right, so let's really break down this first model, the one we're all swimming in right now. This is the Newtonian conflict model, and it's basically the root of the whole problem we're exploring.
The logic here is, well, it's brutally simple. It just assumes that you and I are completely separate. If we're both going after the same thing, the same job, the same resources, then by definition, we are competitors. This worldview literally forces us to see the world as a pile of scraps that we have to fight over. And what does that lead to? Conflict, hoarding, and massive inequality. It's almost inevitable.
And this right here, this metaphor just nails it. Our society acts like a giant game of pool. You've got nearly 8 billion billiard balls on the table, but way too few pockets. So what happens? Of course, constant collision, right? Constant competition. That's the Newtonian view in a nutshell. We're all just separate objects, bumping and grinding against each other, fighting over the same limited prizes, whether it's jobs, resources, or status.
But what if that's not the only way? What if that's just a really limited way of seeing the world? This brings us to the alternative, a totally new paradigm that's inspired by the deeply strange, deeply interconnected reality of quantum physics. This is the quantum unity model.
Now just look at how the math itself changes. Here, 1 + 1 = 1. Now that's not a mistake, it's a huge shift in perspective. It proposes that person A and person B are never truly separate to begin with. We're all just components of a single interdependent system. Your success actually becomes my success. See? We're no longer billiard balls, we're more like interconnected parts of a much, much larger organism. This is the pivot. This is the whole game. We shift from seeing ourselves as separate masses to seeing ourselves as interconnected, entangled fields. Now, in quantum physics, entanglement is this wild idea where two particles can be so deeply linked that whatever happens to one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. So, if we apply that idea to society, it means my fate is just inextricably linked to yours. We're all part of the same invisible field.
Okay, so this all sounds great, but how does an entire global society actually shift from one model to the other? I mean, that's a massive change. The source argues it won't happen through politics or protests, but through something physicists call a phase transition.
The best way to think about this is like water turning into steam. You don't have to go and convince every single water molecule to change, right? No, you just add enough energy, heat, and the entire system transforms all at once. So the argument is society works the exact same way. Imagine a breakthrough in energy. Think fusion or some crazy advanced solar power, something that makes resources pretty much infinite. Suddenly, there's nothing left to fight over. The whole logic of competition just collapses. The most logical, most stable strategy becomes total cooperation. The whole system just flips. And this is the social equation at the very heart of this entire idea. As the amount of available energy, E, approaches infinity, then the amount of conflict, C, has to, by logical necessity, approach zero. Think about it. Scarcity is the engine of conflict. If you turn off that engine, the entire conflict machine just grinds to a halt. But, of course, there's a catch. There's always a catch. The technology for this might be on its way, but there's this incredibly powerful force holding us back, actively preventing this transition. And it's not a technical problem, it's a human one.
What's holding us back is our legacy logic. I mean, just think about it for a second. Our entire world, our banking systems, our national borders, our legal systems, all of it was designed for a world where 1 + 1 = 2. They are hardwired to run on scarcity and competition. This isn't just an old system we're talking about. It's an old operating system that is actively fighting the upgrade.
And this puts us on a clock, a very real clock. According to the source material, the kind of technology we're talking about for this energy revolution could be here within 30 to 50 years. That's not some distant sci-fi future. That's within many of our lifetimes. Which means we are rapidly, and I mean rapidly, approaching a moment where a huge fundamental choice has to be made.
And that brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? The real test here isn't about the tech. It's social. It's about us. Can we upgrade our own internal software, the way we see each other, from that old 1 + 1 = 2 to the new 1 + 1 = 1? Can we actually evolve our thinking before our technology gives us the literal power of a star? Because right now we're kind of operating on the logic of a caveman. And honestly, the answer to that question, well, it's going to define the entire future of our species.